Hey guys, it's Beaver. So many of y'all know I have been working on this video for what seems like forever, but it is going to cover a wide range of different imbalances in our CPS system. CPS, Child Protective Services, Family Department of Children's Services, they're called different things in different states and counties, but this is a government-placed program. Every county, every state has them. I will say this too, not every county has a problem. A lot of these counties, they do really well. I recognize it's a tap system, and of course, it starts and ends with the parents. Or, at least it should. But no, a lot of times it ends in the death of a child and the abuse goes unnoticed. Or you will see there's a case in here where the man reported abuse and he is the one that got ostracized. Still to this day, this case has been going on for a very long time. Please share this video. And I don't say that so I can grow my channel. I say that because everybody should be screaming from the rooftops about the corruption and the imbalances in these programs. There has to be a way out. There has to be a solution. It's got to be something. These children are our future and they don't have a choice. They don't have a voice. And there has to be change. There has to be change. I will not shut up until there's change. So I'll probably die screaming. But please try to get to these stories. It is very important for awareness. They're going to break your heart. They're going to break your heart. And they could have been prevented. They could have been prevented. This is part one, and these are just some stories that have caught my attention. And we will be on to part two. And just please make sure you share this. As far as the algorithm, like the video, y'all know the routine. I don't have to hound y'all. Anyways, here it is. I'm so glad I'm finally getting part one done because it has been hard to pick this up some days because it is just so tragic. Thank y'all. And everybody that I have covered in this video, my heart goes out to y'all. All the families that are struggling, my heart breaks for y'all. And we send prayers for y'all in your time of need, and we just pray that these babies get the justice, these families that have lost kids, the ones that are fighting for kids. We just pray for justice. We pray for balance. And God, just please protect our kids. Just protect our kids. And the people in charge, please place a spirit of common sense and balance more than anything. But we just pray for these families and everybody mentioned in this one and the ones that are not. All right, so this is the story of October Perez. This story's, it's one of the worst too. It's really awful. Grandmother crusades for states abused kids after girl's death. Let's just look at these pictures real quick. This is October's grandmother. I've reached out for maybe a comment. Hopefully I'll hear back from her. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Oh, look at that Care Bears outfit. Now, I do want to say this too. October's biological dad was in the military and he was stationed in Afghanistan when all of this happened. And him and his mother tried. They absolutely tried to get help for this baby. Let's read. October Hall knew something was wrong when her 2-year-old granddaughter would come to visit and always had scrapes and bruises on her head. Then one day, the little girl, October Perez, cried when Hall took off her coat. It hurt her arm. She couldn't hold a cup. So Hall took the child to the emergency room in Great Falls. Now, I'm going to keep reading, and as I'm reading, because when I read it to myself earlier, some of this stuff is going to sound unbelievable. But wait till I get into the pictures, and then you're going to know how just unbelievable it truly is. It is insane how this could have happened. It was so obvious. Just the optics of how obvious it was. This child should have never been in this home. The minute they went to this house, the child should have left with them. Period. No questions asked. And y'all will see that in just a second. Then call family services. Hall mouthed to the woman at the hospital desk. The x-rays showed that October had one broken arm and her other arm was healing from a recent break. The doctor said, called it a common break that the child's mother couldn't explain. Despite the red flags, 2 broken arms, reoccurring bruising, a missing tooth, the grandmother could not persuade State Child and Family Services caseworker to take the little girl away from the filthy home where she lived with her mother and mother's boyfriend. Family Services tell me I have 20 minutes to take her back to her mother. They said there was no proof of abuse. Instead, the agency tried to reach out to October's family for better parenting skills. Caseworkers wouldn't take Hall's photos of bruising, saying photos could be doctored. They wouldn't let her take the child to the dentist. Hall pleaded with them to look into the boyfriend's record in Oklahoma, where his own parental rights had been taken away when he was convicted on drug charges. She felt that the workers did not care and lied to her. And if his own rights was taken, it's in Tennessee, I'll say this, it's very hard to take a parent's rights. It's very hard. So if I had to guess, I would imagine there were some more specific charges to the child to have his rights taken. I do not know this for a fact, but more than likely it was something involving the children is another reason why his rights were taken, accompanied by the drug charges, because I've never seen them just take rights away on drug charges. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it's probably happened, but it's not very likely for drug charges alone. These damn boyfriends living with these mothers, Hall said, they have more rights than the grandparents do because it's their household. Whew. Man, that's awful. And it's so true. Over 6 months, Hall and others, including her son, October's father, a soldier in Afghanistan, complained to family services. The mother called police when a family member photographed October with 3 teeth missing. She hired a lawyer. Nothing worked. Family services said the case is closed. Everything will be all right. Hall said, and in 3 weeks, she was dead. After suffering bruises, a broken back, and other broken bones, head trauma, and brain swelling, October was flown to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City. The little girl was declared brain dead June 25th, 2011. David Haslip, mother of Christy Phelps' boyfriend, was convicted in 2012 of deliberate homicide and sentenced to 100 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The tragedy of October Perez turned Hall from a Great Falls grandmother who was cleaning homes for the past 20 years into an unlikely activist, crusading for stronger protections for Montana kids. Armed with the Scooby High School education and photos of her blonde-haired, blue-eyed granddaughter, Hall has worked with persecutors, police, grandparents, citizens, and activists for the past 5 years. She's passed petitions, met with 2 governors, drove snowy roads in Helena to pester lawmakers, and overcome her fear of public speaking. She baked cookies to raise money and gave dozens of interviews to news reporters. If it helps one kid, it makes it worthwhile. And I feel the exact same way about this channel. If it gets one bit of awareness out, it's all worth it. Her efforts in 2013 and 2015 legislatures helped to pass and strengthen laws aimed at protecting kids. The October Perez law, for which Hall fought in the 2013 session, created a new state ombudsman position for child abuse cases. The ombudsman, we got that. It was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. A network of about 24 grandparents joined the fight in 2015, holding protests against child and family service agencies from Billings to Miles City, Missoula, Great Falls, and they made picket signs accusing individual caseworkers of placing grandchildren with child molesters and calling for family service leaders to resign. After meeting Hall and other activists in the summer of 2015, Governor Steve Bullock created the Project Montana Kids Commission. Well, praise God. That is amazing. He gave it the task of investigating problems at the Division of Child and Family Services, recommending solutions. After 6 months of hearings, meetings, the commission issued its report May 2016. The commission found that the system is in crisis, overwhelmed by too many kids and too few caseworkers. And I agree with that. I mean, yeah, it's, they're not the ones doing it. It's these parents doing it. Let's see. We will not go away. At first, Hall said she felt like a lone ranger. Then she joined by Cheryl Hodges, whose 2 grandchildren died mysteriously within 12 weeks of each other. Hodges' 18-month-old grandson, Derby Hodges, died in 2010 in Kalispell. Weeks later, step-granddaughter, Kiera Pulaski, age 4, died in Republic, Missouri. Both children had been in the care of their mother and boyfriend. Despite the grandmother's suspicious, despite her appeal to TV's Dr. Phil, no one was ever charged. Wow. Hodges testified before Protect Montana Kids Commission and charged her grandchildren died partly because of negligence by family services. At what point does Child and Family Services become complicit? So October's grandmother, she did get back to me, and this was what she wanted me to say. I think what can be added is the fact that although the murder, David Haslip got 100 years without the possibility of parole, it doesn't mean it's over. We have a court date that has been moved 3 times in the last year because Haslip was granted his 3rd evidentiary hearing. He claims he is innocent and has new evidence to the fact. Mom walks the streets here still. So you to see her every once in a while, it is never closure. It is never closure. And I think that is so important to point out that this child's mother, she's still walking around. There's no way in hell she did not know the abuse was happening. She did not, unless she was blind, she knew that that house was never fit for a pet parakeet, much less a child. And my heart goes out to this grandmother and to all the people that love this baby and that tried. But I'm glad that she got back to me before I edited this, and I did just want to say she wanted me to add that. They're still dealing with this, and they still see this mother from time to time, and it is awful. Awful. And our prayers and our hearts go out to this family, because this poor baby, she did not deserve what happened to her at all. At all. And it could have been prevented. And they tried. They tried. So this is an old Crime Online article that I found. Secrecy is killing children. Kansas child welfare system refuses to unseal records on abused and deceased kids. So, and what makes this so prevalent is, funny enough, right now, They're refusing to unseal more documents. This is from 2017. We are now in 2020. And Olivia Jansen and a lot of these other cases, they are still refusing to release. And they place gag orders, they seal them. The minute the child is, from what I've seen, there's a history of abuse, they get reported, they get investigated half-ass, and then when something happens to the child, they come up missing or deceased, then everything is sealed and gagged. And they say in the name of the investigation. But let's just take a read because it's crap. People are not stupid, and this is pretty open. It doesn't take a fool to see what's going on here. Kansas police say since 2014, at least 81 children who were supposed to be monitored by the Kansas Department of Children for Family, DCFS, died from abuse and neglect. Now the public is now fighting in record numbers and demanding change to help further preventable deaths. Now, here's a novel idea. If they would have done this in 2017, maybe Olivia Jansen would be alive, and many, many other children. And this is just one state, one city, one office. This happens all over the country. Evan Brewer, 2017, September, Wichita police confirmed that the remains of a toddler buried inside a cement structure in a residential home were Evan Brewer. Miranda Miller, 36, the boy's mother, was arrested on suspicion of aggravated interference with parental custody, after the child's father, Carlo Brewer, went to the residence at 2037 South Vine in Wichita, searching for his son. Brewer never found his son, although Miller had no custodial rights to the boy. Miller's boyfriend, 40-year-old Stephen Bodine, was also arrested on suspicion of aggravated assault and aggravated interference with parental custody, after he allegedly threatened the boy's father and stepmother and popped their car tire with a hatchet after they approached him about Evan's whereabouts. Let's see. The picture's not here. Sometimes I'll try to get a picture. The boy's family was concerned about Evan in the months prior to his death and tried to get state agencies to step in before the boy's disappearance. In March, Carla Brewer told police he had not seen his son in over a month and begged for assistance. In May, he filed a protection from abuse order, and according to the order, there were signs of abuse filed by DCF that spanned back to 2016. Court records indicated that Miller had abused Evan while in her care. She was accused of leaving the boy in filthy clothes and dirty diapers. Another court document stated that Bodine had beaten Evan so severely that the child needed CPR. My God. Yet somehow Miller still had the child in 2017. Police said they tried on several occasions to serve Miller with the PFA papers, but they could not locate her. In November, local stations sent a request to DCF asking for records to outline the abuse complaints after against Miller. The agency denied the request and said records are sealed. We just have very little faith at this point that justice can be served in a criminal courts given the frequent and repeated refusal to cooperate with us, said Carlo Brewer's lawyer, Shayla Johnston. Although Miller and Bodine remain behind bars, they still haven't been charged with Evan's murder. Now, this was of 2017. I'm going to be following up. Wichita judge who decided to seal DCF records said that there isn't enough evidence to show Evan wasn't neglected or abused, despite the fact that the boy was found dead and sealed in cement inside the home his mother and boyfriend rented. Oh my God. Caleb Blansett. In December 2014, the mother of 10-year-old Caleb Blansett called 911 and said she stabbed her son to death. The court records indicate that the 33-year-old Lindsay Nicole Blansett crept into her son's bedroom before midnight and hit him over the head with a rock. Wow. She then stabbed him with a knife multiple times until he was dead, before calling 911 and admitting what she did. Court records show that shortly after the little boy's death, Kansas DCF arrived at his father, Clint Blansett's home, and asked him to sign paperwork and agree to never talk about his son's death to the media. To DCF with the media. So let me get this straight. They were asked to sign papers that said they could not speak about the death or DCF with the media? Really? It was a gag order. She was there for DCF. She wasn't there for me. She was there to ensure that I wouldn't speak to the press. That was her only concern. Neglect reports against Lindsay Blansett date back to 2012. A timeline on the report outlined a series of allegations. Lindsay Blansett failed to care for her son. DCF determined on several occasions that Caleb was okay after his mother refused services offered by the agency. Oh my God. Blansett told Kansas City Star that he battled DCF for years. Further, a high-level DCF supervisor, Diane Keish, told the paper employees were instructed to shred all paperwork once a child dies. Now, this one right here, Adrian Jones, people that follow the channel, I speak about Adrian often. This case is awful. Adrian Jones. Adrian Jones was 7 years old. Adrian Jones was 7 years old in 2015 when he died from severe abuse and neglect, reportedly by the hands of his own father and stepmother for years prior to his death. Adrian was beaten, starved, and neglected regularly after DCF took the boy away from his mother and gave to his father. Michael Jones, custody of him and his two siblings. Adrian was allegedly taken from one abusive parent and placed into the care of another abusive parent, one without DCF intervening and failing to put the child in protective custody. Later, after Adrian died, his father and stepmother allegedly fed him 2 pigs. Fed him 2 pigs. Court records indicate DCF had reported on the boy at least 2,000-page long. Keish said by looking over the report, it was obvious that the boy should have been taken into protective custody. Why are we saying that children who are at high risk for abuse, who have injuries, who are actually being reported physically abused, why are we saying they're safe and leaving them in a home? In August, Adrian's family filed a lawsuit against numerous defendants, including DCF, for failing to protect him. According to court records, DCF and Missouri Department of Social Services received at least 10 hotline calls from people reporting that the boy had been abused. Yet he was never taken from the home. Instead of removing Adrian from the home, DCF asked Jones to sign paperwork that promised he would keep his collection of firearms out of the boy's reach. From 2011 to 2015, reports were made after Jones and his wife allegedly spanked Adrian until he bled, kicked him in the head, threw him on the floor, taped up his arms and legs, withheld food, and repeatedly tortured him. In November 2015, authorities found the little boy's remains inside a pigsty at the family's Wyandotte County home. Demands for answers. Demands for answers reached an all-time high this year after information about Adrian's abuse surfaced in court. while the statement boasts being made the as part country's safest in Child and Family Services review. Others claim the state is more worried about being praised than actually protecting children. In some ways, it's surreal. Lori Kelly said, "We are sitting there talking about a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old who died a torturous death in the system. And the system's response is that, look at all these blue ribbons we've won. Not one can you do to make sure it doesn't happen again." DCF, on the other hand, disagrees and claims that they are in no way stonewall or misled. Social workers defend themselves by claiming they are overworked and have too many caseloads. Earlier this year, a lawmaker proposed to make all records public once a child dies and seriously injured, unless it was proven that open record would cause significant harm to the child's siblings. Immediately, Kansas City Star DCF went into defense mode and said releasing records would violate law. The answers, however, could possibly be on the way. In June, Kansas legislator passed a bill signed by Sam Brownback and created a child welfare task force to dig into issues concerning DCF. Senator Julia Lynn hopes that the new bill is at least a start into the overwhelming problem concerning child abuse and neglect in Kansas. This is their collective job. The job is not being done. It is my hope and desire that the task force will provide clear purpose and direction with aggressive standards and outcomes to hold agencies providers. Now, I certainly hope that this particular legislation isn't the Adrian's Law. I don't believe it is, but they did try to propose Adrian's Law and is still sitting on the desk in Kansas City in 2020. Nothing happened. Kansas City is still dealing with the exact same issues that they had in 2017. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Olivia. Her life was taken, and it was taken at the hands of her father and the girlfriend, this little sweet baby right here. And is tragic. It's very tragic. And DCFS had been called. I think they had visited the house like 5 times. Just DCFS, just this year, they have visited the house 5 times. Now, there were other government agencies that visited the home. As a matter of fact, 21 times, from the county pet shelter to the police. 21 different times they were brought to this house. The grandparents pleaded with DCFS, with the police department, and nothing. They saw something, they said something, and it didn't work. It didn't work, and this sweet baby was taken ago, only to be found in a shallow grave. Same day an Amber Alert was issued. She was covered in bruises from head to toe and died of a brain bleed, according to investigators. The affidavit for Fox 4 obtained Monday provided more insight into the homicide investigation of Olivia Jansen, her father, Howard Jansen III, and his girlfriend, Jacqueline Kirkpatrick, which each face first-degree murder and aggravated endangering of a child and criminal desecration of a body. In court papers, Jansen III went to CKPD Midtown Patrol Division to report Olivia's disappearance at 8:30 on July 10th, saying that he had last seen her asleep on the couch at 6 p.m. the night before. When the alert went out later that Friday, investigators said that the last time he had seen her was at 11 p.m. So, off the rip, what these papers are saying, is that he was lying to begin with. Thursday, when he went to sleep at the home on Gibbs Road, Look at that beautiful baby. My God. Throughout the day, Friday investigators searched around 2 homes less than a mile apart, the one at 4th and Gibbs Road and another near 48th and Ottawa Streets. Eventually, investigators were led to a wooded area on 34th Street and Steele Road. They found Olivia's body in a shallow grave covered by sticks and dirt that Friday evening. Court papers say that she was badly bruised, and it was apparent to anyone that saw her that she suffered great physical abuse. Her face, arms, and legs were all covered in bruises. She also had a small cut to the back of her head, and an autopsy revealed significant bleeding on the back of her brain, which caused her death. The affidavit is heavily redacted and doesn't reveal any interviews between Jansen III and Kirkpatrick with detectives. Both are. I did want to say that I recorded this when it happened, so I didn't want to rehash. This article lays out exactly what happened to her. But the reason now we know the reason it was heavily redacted was because they'd already had a case already with DCFS. And the reason it was heavily redacted is because they dropped the ball. And they combined the investigation of the death with the CPS records, which automatically means everything had to be sealed. So, and you're going to see here in a second, I'm going to show a video where they deny these, papers being unsealed, these DCFS, 533 pages on a little baby who's not that old. She should have never had a case file that big. We seek justice for Olivia. I will put the link for the playlist. This case is close to me. There's a Rainbow Project. All of these links will be in the description if y'all want to get involved with, and this is where Adrian Jones's case took place. Adrian's law still has not happened. This is another county with just an overwhelming amount of egregious corruption and dropping the ball, passing the buck, cover-ups, whatever you want to call it. But these community members are not having it, and they're fighting, and they should be. Kids are dying. This is serious. But yeah, I just wanted to put this in here at the end. But yeah, this is an awful case. It's an awful case, and it could have been prevented. These grandparents tried. Now, at the time of this recording, not this one right now where I'm speaking, but the one y'all just watched with the article, I didn't know all this about the DCFS. So much has came out since then. So I just wanted to drop that little bit of information in there. But yeah, please check into Olivia Jansen's case because it's awful as well. And they have an Olivia's Rainbow Project. All this information will be in the description.
We got a status update. After KBC9 News requested records from the Kansas Department for Children and Families, we learned today there is a 533-page case file for Olivia Jansen that DCF produced for the court. It's filled with a lot of notes from caseworkers and law enforcement. Of course, Jansen's body was found on July 10th. DCF has released a summary in this case showing 2 calls to DCF regarding Olivia's well-being. The first was a hotline call for physical abuse in February, which the department deemed unsubstantiated after visiting Olivia at home. The second was a call Olivia's grandmother made June 22nd about concerns of drug use in Olivia's home. The summary states the family was contacted a week later via video call while they were out of town. Now, Olivia's father did take a drug test 7 days later and tested positive for THC. To this point, DCF has only released the summary of those records. A judge took it under advisement today whether or not he will allow the full 533 pages in this case to be released to the public. He was going to do that within the next couple of weeks. Rule on that.
So this story is about Alexandria Hill, and a little backstory for her. They lived in an apartment complex. They had a neighbor that was a police officer, off-duty police officer. He had some kind of dealings with law enforcement. So they smelled marijuana, and they got called. So with that, with them smelling that, now when this happened, the child was asleep. They was in their living room. I'm not justifying it, but I think we need to be balanced in our brains to know that it would be no different outside of the smell than them taking, getting hammered and drunk in their living room. I'm not condoning, I don't pass judgment at all. But the marijuana and the mother had a history of seizures. Now, they, as a precaution, and I know this is a precaution, they say don't drive and don't leave the child alone with the mother in case she had an episode from seizures, which was fair, which was fine. She wasn't never left alone because of her seizure episodes. But those two things, those only two things, is the reason why this baby wound up in CPS and foster care system to begin with. A smell, and well, the baby was in bed. The baby was not anywhere near around it. I don't judge at all. And you're going to see just how exactly ridiculous this is in just a second. But there is a little bit of the backstory. They only did this on the premise of this doctor's note, which had already been in play, and the fact that these parents smoked marijuana.
Telling his story to KXAN after his 2-year-old daughter died from injuries she sustained while in foster care. 2-year-old Alexandria Hill was pronounced dead on Wednesday, 2 days after police picked her up from a home in Rockdale. Police say when they arrived, the girl had severe head injuries and she wasn't breathing. On Thursday, Cheryl Small, this woman, Hill's foster mother, was arrested and charged with murder. Police say Small admitted to them that she threw the girl to the ground. Hill's father, who had not had custody of his daughter since late November, had this reaction.
I was blown away to find out she was laying in a coma. That's not what you expect, especially when your child's in state custody for safety. And now they're suffering more injuries and more heartache than they ever have any time in their life before that.
Well, bail for Cheryl Small is set at $100,000.
Death of a 2-year-old girl in what police describe as a horrific case of child abuse. I'm Tyler C. Swarta.
And I'm Terry Gruca. The Night Beat's Chris Betts spoke tonight with the victim's father. Chris, it's her foster mother facing charges.
That's right, Terry, and we do want to give fair warning. Some of the images in this story may be difficult to see. A woman trusted with taking care of a 2-year-old is charged with murder tonight after that child was rushed to a hospital in a helicopter on Monday and taken off life support late last night. This evening, I spoke with the child's father about his last moments with his little girl.
B. C.
He never thought his visit with her Thursday would be his last.
We got to sit down at McDonald's and have lunch and play for a while. And she got a little Despicable Me 2 toy in her Happy Meal, and she loved it. And she kept climbing up in my lap, and she fed me French fries, and it's a lot of fun.
On Monday night, Joshua Hill's daughter, Alexandria, or Alex as they like to call her, was rushed to a hospital with severe head injuries and immediately placed on life support.
I can't even describe it.
Alex was living with foster parents after CPS removed her from her parents' home last November for neglectful supervision. Hill admits they were smoking pot when their daughter was asleep.
We never hurt our daughter. She was never sick. She was never in the hospital. She never had any issues until she went into state care.
For 2 months, Alex was placed in a home that Hill says was dangerous.
She would come to visitation with bruises on her and mold and mildew in her bag. It got to a point where I actually told CPS that they would have to have me arrested because I wouldn't let her go back.
In January, CPS placed her with this woman, Cheryl Small. Hill says things seemed safe there.
They listened. They paid attention when we had concerns. They tried to keep us in the loop. But in the end, it wasn't enough.
Hill got the call Monday night that his daughter was in a Temple hospital.
They wouldn't tell me what condition she was in or what was wrong or what had happened, anything. The only thing they would tell me is I needed to be there. And when I got there, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I found out that Alex was in a coma.
For 2 days, they held out hope she would regain consciousness. But on Wednesday night, Alex was taken off life support.
And Alex passed around 10:30 that night.
Detectives say Small's explanation didn't match Alex's injuries, and on Thursday, they charged the foster mother with murder. Hill says he was less than 4 months away from getting Alex back, and now he'll never get the chance. After police were called to Alex's foster home in Rockdale Monday, CPS removed another child in the home. Small was arrested today, and her bond is set at $100,000.
Just heartbreaking.
So this is the story of Brad Lamb. I'm going to read some of this. This is pretty lengthy, but this is from their own words, his own words. So let me tell you a little bit about their story. And there is a plethora of information about this case too. And this is out of Torrent County. This is the same county. I believe it's a different judge, but same county as Brianna and Journey. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that story, but I covered it a while back. It says, my name is Brad Lamb. My 2 kids, Isaiah and Aria, as well as my wife, Amanda, have been victimized by Torrent County family law. My wife has lived under the same roof with Isaiah since he was 14 months old, and has been involved in every aspect of Aria's life since birth. It's a terrible injustice that has happened to me and my wife and me. And worst of all, my 2 young children. In fact, this has affected my entire family and everyone in our lives. My children are, as we speak, in the hands of the person that my son Isaiah has made multiple outcries against their mother and their half-brother. The definition of an outcry witness in the United States law is the person who first hears an allegation of abuse made by a child or another victim of abuse or sexual crime. The witness is legally obligated to report the abuse and may be called upon for trial proceedings. I will explain the details below of how Judge Meredith Wells, her amicus attorney, Lindsay Newell, orchestrated the cover-up for my children's abuse and shutting down all outside investigations, making up excuses for the abuser, calling my child liars, time and time again. We have well-documented case of sexual, physical, mental abuse. Our case has also been documented for an exceptionally long time of the mother giving the children something to make them sleep for 15 to 16 hours straight, from pickup at 6 p.m. through 10 a.m. the next day. We've also documented the drugging of the children that resulted in a horrendous stomach bloat, 8 to 10 hours straight of diarrhea after pickup. Parental alienation is the least of her abuse. We have over 100 pictures of physical abuse as well as a huge stomach bloat, ongoing diarrhea upon pickup from the mother's house. We have testimony of my wife, family members, and family friends that have for years been testifying to the ongoing abuse of my children. We have 2 sexual assault nurses. My son has now made outcries to 6 nurses, 3 separate visits, 2 separate hospitals, 2 of those nurses being sexual assault nurse examiners, SANE nurses is what they're called, at Cook's Children's Hospital. These include graphic details given by my son and made outcries for his little sister as well. He has also made outcries, of course, to my wife and me and various family members, friends, supervisors appointed by Family Court Services, and a play therapist. So, this is pretty lengthy, as y'all can tell. So, Brad's story is pretty incredible. And these kids, now let me scroll up. So, let me tell y'all about these nurses and things like that. They've had 3 supervisors that have said they don't even want to do it anymore because they have spoke out of what they have saw during these supervised visits, which his wife is not even allowed to go to. What has happened to this man and his kids and his family is awful. Let me show y'all something. So this is a polygraph. I'm not going to read all this, but I am going to get down here to this portion. It has the questions. And let me explain this too. The outcries were brought to the parents, to Brad. Brad reports them. And now Brad is the one being ostracized. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? He did not seek this out. It happened to his children in being a proactive, protective advocate, as we all are supposed to be for our children as parents. They told him it didn't happen. This poor man and this family have been through complete hell. I'm not going to get extremely graphic with all the information that I have and that I've read, because I just, it's just too much, and it's not necessarily my story to tell, but I am so willing to help. But as y'all can see right here, no deception indicated. There was 2 polygraphs taken. Let me show y'all something else. This is his wife's polygraph. No deception indicated. I'm not going to show anything really, intrusive. And I've zoomed in, so y'all don't see anything. But you can see the bloating. Let me show y'all something else. So this right here, initially, Brad thought that these were cigarette burns. So as he wasn't getting anywhere, and he reached out, and, he started getting a lot of feedback, a lot of law enforcement feedback, and he was told that those were from being tased, and that's what that looks like. And I have to say, that's what it looks like to me too. There are so many pictures I'm not going to show, but there's bruising, there's swelling, there's bruising on the head, there's bruising on the bottoms, just really excessive. Even for discipline, it's excessive. This literally looks like whether it was a cigarette, whatever it was. These are not normal marks that a kid would get from a bite or anything else. It's not an area where you can just scratch. It's not like a sore. You can tell it's not super infected, which would, if that was just a scratch or a sore. No, that's not what this is. I have 4 kids from 20 to 5. And I'm telling you, the things I've seen is not right. And the personal documents and the accounts of what these children say, what this child says, what the children have said, it is awful. It's awful. And this is not done for clout. This is not a story to better Brad's life. Brad is extremely successful. He is a trainer, a bodybuilder. His wife is, I'm not exactly sure what she does in a profession, but she's successful. These are good people. And they're on their things. He's very health conscious. So it doesn't make sense. This was not something like another case that y'all are somewhat familiar with. Most people are familiar with it. It's not like that. This is nothing nefarious. This man has been locked up. Y'all don't even know what all this man's been through. All because he reported abuse of his children. Now, it wouldn't be the end, okay, fine. And some of it is unbelievable. Some of it is unbelievable. If I had not seen it myself, it's just so egregious. It's almost like they have blind people reading the documents at their CPS office. There's no reason why something shouldn't have happened. And there's damn sure not a reason why this man is on supervised visits, because he spoke up. He not only spoke up, he spoke out, and he was an advocate for his kids, which is what he should be. He should be. This county has a history of this. It's a history. Let me show y'all something else. I told y'all this judge has a history. She actually has her very own webpage, Impeach Judge Judith Wells. Isn't that something? Not too many people get that. There's so many cases. Let's see, what does this say? Public corruption, bribery, organized crime, domestic terrorists, lynch mob, dangerous criminals, fraud, racketeering. Let's just see a little bit. Louis Carina's team, a defense attorney. I'm not going to read all this. But I'm wanting to show y'all this so y'all would know, like, I wasn't making this up. I wasn't making this up. She's awful. She's awful. And there's a guardian ad litem too. Let's see. I'm going to show y'all another. Well, here's some of the child abuse outcries for help past polygraph test court. They threw out the polygraphs. Judge Youth Wells responsible for child abuse. Let's see. Let's go see what this one has to say. The provocateur. Tarrant County has a long-standing reputation for its bias and corruption in its courts. In one notorious incident, Texas District Judge George Gallagher of Tarrant County used electric shocks on defendant Terry Lee Morris when Morris tried and convicted for solicitation in 2016. The story received widespread coverage after an appeal court reversed the conviction, citing the judge's behavior. Here's part of the story. This county, this is a history in this county. Making divorce pay. I was first introduced to Tarrant County when I did 2015 article for Capital Research Center entitled Making Divorce Pay. In the article, I interviewed Jennifer Olson, an activist from Tarrant County. The article was about a group called Associated Family and Coalition, but Olson described a AFCC team up locally with Tarrant County judges to take advantage of access to visitation grants. Visitation grants. Did y'all hear that correctly? All right. This is Isaiah's Law. This is one of Brad's children. Look at that poor baby. That big old giant bruise on his damn face. God, this makes me so mad. Allowing civil trial judges to sidetrack the investigation of a criminal assault and serial abuse of our children has got to stop. We need statutory law that will require family court judges to stop the music and allow criminal investigation and prosecutors to take the perpetrator of these outrages into criminal court and obtain a conviction. Over our experience with the family court system, we have witnessed that authorities often try to make criminal cases regarding children's abuse a civil matter. Guys, and it's not. This is facts. These are criminal charges, cases, crimes. These are crimes committed on these kids. Crimes. Often focusing on the rights of the abuser over the rights of the children. Major change needs to occur, which is why we are looking to make new laws in these cases, one of which being Isaiah's Law, to ensure child abuse cases are handled in the same way as a domestic violence or a blank case. I can't read that word. Because it is in fact domestic violence to a child and blank to a child. SA abuse. Guys, this poor baby, they killed this baby's guinea pig right in front of her. I'm talking about, these are like torturous behaviors. Psychological damage, mental, physical, spiritual abuse, all the way around. The best thing these kids got going for them is these awesome parents, the mom, the dad, and the stepmom, which she's not even a stepmom at this point to me in my mind. She's put in the work. And I'll tell you something else too. It really infuriates me that they're not even allowing his wife to see these kids. They could use a good positive motherly influence. It is disgusting what is happening to this man and his kids and his wife. I'm going to have this link and a whole bunch of other, Mr. Lamb, Brad Lamb, he is on it. He is advocating for his children in the proper way. He's not exploiting them. it's not like that. He's literally just advocating for his kids. He's not receiving money for this nothing. Like it's not like that. He has a job. He's very successful. I mean, oh God, it's just awful. And I promise you, unless you had sit down and looked at all of it, or you dive into this, at first, at first value, you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, because you don't want to believe that this shit is happening, but it does. That's what this whole video is about, is imbalances. And nobody wants to take this to task. Nobody. This kind of egregious behavior in our systems put out by the government for our children, it should work better than any of them. These kids are our future. And they're children. They're voiceless. They're victims. If they don't have a say, if they don't have a voice, if they speak out, then who does? The perpetrators. And the parents are bogged down. It's mind-blowing to me that this is still happening. This case is still going on. It should be, these cases should be plastered everywhere, but they're not. Why? Because it's hard to believe. And people, I don't even know exactly why. It is hard to believe, but it's change has to come. Change. Look at this giant bruise on this baby's face. Change has to come. Kids do not make up that kind of stuff consistently. Past polygraphs, everything. These parents are on the up and up. This boy's mom is not. She's kind of nuts from everything I've heard. And, and step brothers and sisters, sometimes they abuse, and they are awful to be around children. It's awful. I did just want to say this too, that these babies have also been examined by forensic psychologists specific in SA abuse, and they passed. These kids, even the forensic, I can't remember exactly what the word is, maybe it's psychologist, but they passed. The kids were not being deceitful. They passed. Like their stories were believable. It's awful. This man did everything right. And I cannot believe that this is what's happening. I'm going to leave you with the court proceeding for Brad. And just so you could see a little bit of what, a little taste of what he's been going through with the courts. And it's just awful. And we send prayers for this family. Absolutely prayers. And we're going to keep speaking out.
We may not agree with the reasons, but we don't. We're kind of just left to arbitrarily guess at, the reasons, that are in the record. And, I don't think it's that difficult to just lay out what it is that, you're looking for, Judge. It doesn't require argument because it is what it is. It's what you're looking for. It's not, we're not going to convince you to look for something else. It just is what it is. We're just trying to do our job to tie this off and leave Mr. Lamb with some guidance, or his new lawyer with some guidance.
All right. Well, the roadmap that you need to get off of supervised visitation is that Mr. Lamb needs to quit making unsubstantiated allegations against Miss Washington that she's abusing these children, make unsubstantiated allegations that her son is abusing these children, and somehow with his actions compelling the child to make outrageous allegations against these people that are not substantiated, and that the child will not repeat except in the presence of Mr. Lamb. And that's roadmap.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
100 child deaths not reported to a state watchdog, a group that makes sure CPS is doing its job protecting children from abuse and neglect.
We have a disturbing update tonight to a Target 8 investigation that we brought you last week. Target 8 investigator Susan Samples discovered today that the problem she exposed has been going on for years. Susan?
Brian, at least 122 child deaths over 3 years. That's how many deaths the state failed to report promptly to the ombudsman, who is legally required to review some of those cases. As I reported last week, at the same time Target 8 started asking questions about unreported deaths, CPS says it discovered 37 missed child deaths in 2016. But tonight, we know there's more. The state told me today that since my report last week, CPS has found 45 more child deaths it failed to report to the ombudsman in 2015, and at least 40 it missed in 2014. For context, the ombudsman gets 200 to 300 child death notifications a year, so CPS missed more than 10% of deaths. It was the death of 10-month-old Chance Powell of Sparta that got me started on this. I came across his 2015 death, an accidental morphine overdose at home, while researching the opioid crisis. I asked the Office of Children's Ombudsman at that time if it had reviewed Chance's death as state law requires to make sure CPS caseworkers did their job in their contacts with Chance's family prior to his death. That's when it was discovered that Children's Protective Services had failed to notify the ombudsman of Chance Powell's death. CPS told me today that it will be cross-checking records monthly now, saying that will ensure it reports every death, every time, so the ombudsman can review it. It also points out that the agency, CPS, does its own internal investigations and reviews of death cases, looking for how it can improve, even if they don't get that outside independent review from the ombudsman, which the state law requires. We'll continue tracking it for you. Susan Samples, back to you.